So now we have files and folders kind of represented in Firebase, and we have an idea about what properties should they have, how should they look, how should they be working together. Now we're going to try and model it inside Angular TypeScript with classes, right? So let's jump into Angular. Now I'm going to go into the file system folder right here under app, because that's kind of where my database representation of my file system is going to reside. So I just decided to put it in here. You can put it anywhere you want to, but I'm going to let the file system be a representation of my file system as the database on Firestore. So here we're going to add a new folder right now, just call it shared, because the file and folder, they might be used otherwhere inside my system as well. So let's just share those models right away inside the shared folder. Now the next thing I want to kind of add in here is I'm going to add a new file right here, and that's actually going to be called file TS, because that's going to be representing my file class, right? Let's just add that one. Now when this file is actually open, I'm going to start out by just exporting a class right here so that we know that this is a class, and we're going to call it file. There we go. So now we have the class available of the type file. But what should be put in here? Well, I'm just going to be lazy and copy paste all the fields from here for now, pasting them in. And now we kind of need to figure out what these guys are all about. Now first we're going to have a created, and that's going to be a string. That's easy. That's done. Get that out of the way. We're going to have a file name. That's also going to be a string. Get that out of the way. We're going to have a MIME type. That's going to be a string. Now the MIME type could actually be an enum, but I'm not going to do that yet. But we have only a limited set of image types. So we could put this as an enum, actually explaining that we only have JPEG, PNG, SVG, etc., etc. What you want to save here is images. But now let's just keep it as a string. It's okay for now. The owner, that's actually the owner ID. So I'm still considering if I need that, but let's just keep it for now. Then we can remove it later if we feel that it's redundant code. The last one is the size. That's a number. So let's just put in a number right here. Now notice I just mapped exactly what I had in Firebase. It's the exact same properties that I have right here in Firebase that I just mapped over now so that we have a file available right here. Now I have to consider one more thing, and that's pretty much just, are all of these mandatory? Do I need to have all of these to call myself a file? And I think most of them are, but maybe we don't need an owner to create a file. So let's just skip that for now. It might be mandatory later to have it, so we'll remove the optional part, but let's just keep it as optional for now. Sweet. What else do we need? Well, we also need a folder, right? So I'm going to make another file right here. I'm going to call it folder.ts. So now we have two different files, two different classes, two different models here, the file and the folder, right? You can add that to Git. So how does a folder look? Well, jumping back to my setup right here, and because I've just hard-coded this and I've given myself an idea about how it should look. It seems it needs a name and an owner, two strings, very simple to do, so let's start there. We're going to first of all, of course, make an export class and call it folder right here. There we go. Now with that, we can start just adding a name, and let's just copy this again, just to be lazy again. I'm copying the name and the owner, name and owner. Now, I would almost say this would be easier just to write these two in, but again, I'm just trying to show you guys that I'm mapping it directly over with the same names and everything. Because if you don't do that, you'll start having problems if you put in wrong names. So just at least use the names that you want to, right? And they're both strings, so there we go. Now we have these two available. The next thing I want to add is actually all the files inside my folder right here. Now the files are not, they're kind of different, right? So let's try and have a look at the files. Now the files is an array. Okay, so let's start out by making it into an array. Array. But it's not an array of files, even though you might expect that. It's not going to be that. It's actually going to be an array of display name and unique ID. How do we define that? Well, we define that by saying we have an array with an object inside it. So now we can define the type of that array right here. Now that array is going to be display name and UID. That's the two values we're going to get in there. So let me just try and copy these again to kind of show that, again, it's just the same, exact same names I'm using right here. And it seems that this is going to be a string like this, and so is this guy. It's going to be a string. There we go. So now we have these guys defined as well. Sweet. Now we have that. This model is starting to look like something we can use, right? And let's just end the files right there. So now we've defined how files should look inside this folder, and then we're going to do the same now for the subfolders, right? So subfolders like this, and that's also going to be an array with the type of object inside. And let's just end this right here with a semicolon. And then let's jump over here and see how a subfolder looks. It's a name and a unique identifier. And yes, I know I shouldn't do this. But again, I want you guys to be perfectly clear that I'm just copying the exact names. Let's just do it manually this time. But I'm copying the exact names right here. So I'm going to have a name like this, and that's going to be a string. And the second thing I need is the UID. So UID, unique identifier, and that's going to be a string. Sweet. So now we have this set up, and we actually have our models set up and ready to use. And again, we have to consider, should there always be files? No, that's optional. Should there always be folders? No, that's actually also optional. Should there always be an owner? Well, I'm not sure. I don't think so, but it's optional. So now we have set up both our models, and we're actually ready to start working with these models in the next lesson. See you next time. Have fun.